Tripurari, gaye hum sab mahima teri. Jai Vireshwar, Jai Tripurari, gaye hum sab mahima teri. Jai ho, Vivekananda. Om Sahana. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavo Vahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvesho Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Welcome back, everyone who is joining us from distant points in the world. Hopefully some of my students in India are catching this. But of course, you can always look back on these because they're stored on our website. And Advaita Academy has been so kind as to purchase this equipment for us so that we can. Now, as far as where we left off in the teachings, we have been looking at the intelligent particle chart these whole 5 weeks, because it's sort of the foundation of all of this teaching. The idea is, as Sri Ramakrishna used to say, we have to charge up the chitta. Chitta means that mind stuff. It's an interesting English term, kind of queer English term we've come up with for chitta. Mind stuff means everything our mind is stuffed with, all the thoughts, and of all kinds, positive, negative, and mixed, and fantasies and imaginations and envisionments and higher thoughts too. All there as a part of the chitta. So Sri Ramakrishna used to say, in the human being, that only needs to be charged up. And so it will become like a hot air balloon, buoyant, and it'll just rise, instead of rainwater, which just falls and seeks the lowest place to settle, like a cow hoof print in a Death Valley or something very low. So people's mind has a tendency to go downward like that and get depressed and unhappy and despondent and brooding a lot. So giving up that tendency of brooding then and focusing on these teachings, we charge up the chitta and the mind begins to become buoyant, and each day it begins to wake up in that buoyant condition. That's called sattva. Before that, the mind was going through periods of tamas, which somebody mentioned at the break, and rajas. Tamas is slothfulness, heedlessness, dullness, and rajas is frenetic activity. You're probably aware of both of those in your life, having been heavy-minded sometimes and having been very restless, or maybe you still are restless. So the idea is to try to attain sattva, balance of mind, and at that point, teachings will make sense to you. You can hear the exact same teaching from the exact same person, maybe even a day apart, and if your mind is in a sattvic state, it will have an insight, it will be inspired. But if it's in a tamasic or rajasic state, something completely untoward will happen, or something different. You will not get the gist of the teaching. So keeping your mind in this single state, sthiti pragnasya, Krishna used to say. That's why we sing to Krishna quite often. Many of you have probably heard it. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Govinda, the name for Krishna. And some of the hundreds and hundreds of songs, bhajans are called, and stotrams that have been written for Sri Krishna, who is more like the archetypical soul, the most ancient of avatars, way, way back, along with Ram, which is why Rama and Krishna and our Ramakrishna is so important to us here at SRV associations, because we feel like that ancient, timeless soul has manifested himself again, along with Sita and Radha in the form of Holy Mother, Sri Sharda Devi. And you might even say Hanuman in form of Swami Vivekananda, because they both jumped the ocean. And Swami Vivekananda definitely did that for us in 1893 when he left India and came here. So just mentioning Sri Krishna brings some of those beautiful songs to mind. But he was the one in the Bhagavad Gita that's talking about sthiti pragnasya. Keep your mind steady. Be content with anything. Whatever happens, stay in an even-minded state. Upeksha, the Buddhists call it. It's equanimity. So try to remain unruffled. They say no matter what happens to you, like the father of yoga says, if you get a cold and if they say, are you sick? You say, no, I'm not sick. My body caught a cold. That's discrimination between the real and the unreal, which we're talking about in these sheaths. So you maintain that stance, I am Atman. Why? Because I have crushed the stars to atoms, I've unhinged the universe. I've looked into the 3 bodies of my non-self. I've examined the 5 sheaths, the 5 koshas, and seen them to be lacking. That is, they're all insentient. And I am pure sentiency. Buddha, I am Buddha. Buddha nature is pure sentiency, you see. Our word in Vedanta is Atman. So when you're looking at the 5 sheaths, you're looking at the 5 sheaths that the Atman has associated with. And that same Atman dissolves them in deep sleep every night and takes them on again when it wakes up and dissolves them again in deep sleep and dreams about them in dream state. So AUM of Om equals waking, dreaming, and deep sleep state. So they want you to master the A of Om, so you master your waking state. You become a master of all this. And then in your dreaming state, you master your dreaming state, you master the U of Om. And I would say probably it's different than what people are talking about, not just lucid dreaming. See, the West gets fascinated with sensationalism and occult powers and things like that. That's their fascination. I mean, take for example all the movies we're seeing with occult powers in them and stuff. So the real point for the yogi is not to have lucid dreaming, because that's just playing with unmanifested nature. It's just playing with thought, playing with your chitta. There's a beautiful song in India, I could sing it, but I'd probably just say it basically, is, a man has come to me from a land that never sleeps. Now all my dreams have been transformed into meditations. Beautiful. Whoever wrote that song, was a yogi, was a deep practitioner, and realized that dreaming is to be awoken from. So in our tradition, yes, you can interpret dreams. Somebody was talking to me at the break about Sufism and Muslim religion, how important it is to interpret the dreams in that tradition. That's a key to your awakening state. But better than lucid dreaming would be to awaken from all dreams. From dreams awake, from bonds be free. Know the truth. Thou art he, thou art she. Beautiful tantric saying in the tantras. So, and also echoed in the Upanishads. So, thou art he means the man is Shiva. Thou art she means the woman is Shakti. See, this is the divine couple, the eternal divine couple. Kali dances on Shiva's breast. We might have seen these beautiful icons, these pictures. Kali, Shiva's gone supine, fallen flat. He's still got the hearing horn in his ear, you see. He's still hearing Om. He's gone into a deep state of samadhi, you see. And Kali is dancing on his chest, the black goddess. One songwriter sings, why this? Is she so immodest that she would dance on her husband's chest? And the teaching comes back, no, he's the flower, she's the fragrance. She comes out of him, you see, and plays and sports, and then dissolves back into him. There are beautiful songs about that too. The devotion of my mind, manas, mono, is to Mother Kali, see, the divine goddess, as she dances in her sportive play of consciousness, the dynamic principle of Brahman, the dynamic power, the Shakti force, see. So this is where Vedanta and Tantra, those two great streams, begin to merge, they converge and they come apart and they converge throughout time giving us these beautiful teachings combined with these wonderful deities. Basically, I think the most well-rounded spiritual life means, because some people are saying, I just want the wisdom tradition. Other people are saying, I just want to dance and sing. Two different temperaments. One Bhakta and one's Jnana, right? So the two are one, you see. Bring them together. The wisdom principles, learn all about them. Illumine your mind, because your mind's going with you after death. But also worship the deities. The deities are made of pure wisdom, those streams of intelligence. And as you go back in the sheaths, you'll find that there's a deity to each one of these sheaths, maybe even a host of deities. You probably are aware of Tibetan Buddhism and its advent here in the West, thanks indirectly to Mao Zedong, chasing the Tibets out of the lamas out of Tibet. Actually, he spread the bees of enlightenment all around the world, you see, unbeknownst to him, because I think he was the one that said religion is the opiate of the masses, or something like that. But actually what happened when he Red Chinese went into Tibet was not all horrible. It was actually the divine will that all of these great teachings, these tantric teachings, actually Vajrayana teachings that blend Tantra and Buddhism and yoga. It's a really beautiful hybrid. And so a lot of people are taking to the Tibetan Buddhist teachings now. I certainly did in my life and learned a lot from them. So that's the idea here, is that to blend these kinds of paths, integrate them, synthesize them. Better yet, see them as one to begin with, and then you won't have to synthesize them. All religion is indigenous to your soul, right? There's no such thing as a foreign religion. This is all in me. And all these deities are within me, all my ancestors are within me, the gods and goddesses are within me, and guess what? God itself is within me. I am that. And that's Advaita Vedanta right there. This self is Brahman. Prajnanam Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. Tat Tvamasi. That you are. That thou art. See? Or Ayamatma Brahma. This self with its 5 sheaths is really actually Brahman when you just take away the 5 sheaths. Now you can take away the 5 sheaths by blowing your brains out for a second, you see, committing suicide, but actually that's a very inferior way of doing it. Actually, the way you want to take away the 5 sheaths is to meditate them away. You do it perfectly tonight in deep sleep. You lose all attachment to form, without a fear, without a doubt. You go straight to the light, and you exist in this blissful condition called the Ananda Maya Kosha, the sheath of bliss. Let's translate that, sheath of bliss. This was a sheath of food, this was a sheath of subtle energy, this was the sheath of mind. We're at the sheath of intellect right now. And then there's the sheath of bliss. You see, Ananda Maya Kosha. That's the ego. That's that separate eye maker we were talking about. So the characteristics of those are all to be seen. Why? So that all doubt gets removed about your association with them. You can only associate with body, energy, mind, and intellect when you're master of them. To overcome fear means to master them. If you haven't mastered them, then you have fear of them somewhere in you. That's why people are afraid of the water. Some children are afraid of water, others aren't, because they have fear of water somewhere, because they drowned in a previous lifetime. They never faced it off. I'd send my 2 Labradors, to the water. One would jump right in, fetch the coconut. The other would run away. You see, wouldn't go in the water. Took him most of his little doggy life, for the other dog to kind of nurse him into the water. So pretty soon they would both jump in. And then claws were flying. You couldn't get near them. You see, you'd swim with them. They'd scratch you, looking for an island. So there's a reason why this fear exists in us and these doubts. They say, says Lord Shiva, that doubt, ignorance, and fear make up the curtain of nescience, which falls down over your inner eye when you go into deep sleep. And what thickens that curtain of nescience? Brooding on fear, doubt, and ignorance. Nice teaching, huh? Om Namah Shivaya. Yes. beautiful image is right here on our altar. He's the God of destruction. He's the God of dissolution. He's the God of wisdom. He's the God of formlessness. We go to him in order to learn this conscious art of sloughing off forms, like a snake gets rid of its old skin. See? These are all different layers of skin. See? But you're this Kundalini snake that's coming up the spine. You see? So, if that's the curtain of nescience, then in order to raise it, or maybe thin it out, you see, give up my brooding first on all things that make me fear, that make me doubt, that make me ignorant. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to do some spiritual practice. 4 spiritual practices, basically. Meditation, which is the ultimate. I'm starting out with the topmost first and going down. Then study of scriptures and discussing them with your teacher and your sangha, going to class, this kind of things. Jnana yoga, it's called. And then worship and devotion at the altar, offering flowers, incense, putting your head below your heart, prostrating before the deity, going to temples, churches, with sincere heart, surrendering yourself, your small self, to the great self. That's bhakti yoga. And then 4th, karma yoga, which is what everyone's in training for here in the West. They're all aspiring karmis. See? And probably you might as well include the whole world, because the West has taken over the whole world practically, and now everyone's running around like chickens with their heads cut off. I was just, before class today, in my house up in the mountain above the ashram, sitting and saying how wonderful it was to do nothing. Just to sit and to think about the higher teachings. That sound, precious live streaming audiences, our Hawaiian rain. Falling upon our ashram. So again, silence, that is deep introspection, peace of mind, very important for the human being. So these 4 practices, very important. Dhyan yoga, meditation, Jnana yoga, wisdom, bhakti yoga, devotion, karma yoga, selfless action. Now we found our way to the Vijnanamaya Kosha. Let's look at the characteristics of that. This is your intellectual sheath, or your intellectual body. It consists of the buddhi, the intelligent principle, the organs of feeling and the sense of I am the doer. You might think that I am the doer maybe originates in the Anandamaya Kosha, but according to those who have inspected the Vijnanamaya Kosha, Vijnana means higher wisdom, is that sense of I do comes from that mechanism. I will conquer, I will move, I will learn, I will acquire. All comes out of that Vijnanamaya Kosha. It reflects consciousness, but is a transformation of nature, prakriti. So it's a good reflector of consciousness, like the moon is a reflector of the sun's light. Vijnanamaya Kosha reflects well the light of Brahman. This idea of reflection in degrees is very important. My teacher, Swami Sheshananda, used to say, light shines best off of a mirror that shines a little less well off of a lake, and then a little less off of a leaf, and very poorly off of a stone. So basically, you could be describing lots of things with that analogy. You could be describing the 5 sheaths. There's very little light off of the stone of the body, and a little more light shines through the prana, the leaf of the prana, and a little bit more light shines off of the lake of the mind, and more light shines off of this mirror of the intellect, especially if it's kept wiped clean. If the intellect is kept wiped clean by those 4 yogas every day, meditation, study, devotion, and action, selfless action, then the mirror of the mind stays clean, and your day goes fine. You see, I and my Father are one. Seek thee first the kingdom of heaven. Birds have nests, have foxes, and birds have nests, and birds and foxes have nests and holes, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head here. All of these sayings, teachings coming from whatever tradition or whatever scripture make sense to you, and they become precious to you. You hold them in the heart daily. So the intellect has that ability, but it also has that ability of becoming a dusty mind, so that you're not seeing and thinking right. We know that about the intellect. Einstein said that, for instance. One day, he's thinking of the highest theorems, and another day, he forgets to tie his shoelaces and trips and breaks his arm. So the intellect is very astute and together one day, but very foolish another day. So the intellect has that sort of that rise and fall tendency like the prana does. So that's why you can't classify it as the ultimate reality. It works, feels, and says, I am the doer, I am the seer, I engage in works, I enjoy their results. It holds within it the three states of consciousness, plus pleasure and pain. Well, there's another triputi, 3 states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. We have to start thinking about these as 3 states of our own consciousness, and we have 3 bodies that go with them. And our consciousness leaves the physical body, goes to our dream body, and then leaves that and goes to our deep sleep body. It's our business to try and become aware of what's happening when that goes on. That is, we have to take our intelligence with us. We have to hone our intelligence. We have to get our intelligent particle charged up so we know what's happening to us in each moment of our existence, because each moment of our existence is one of our lifetimes. Who knows which lifetime is surfacing in any given minute of your day? Why you're feeling the way you are is because of that particular lifetime is coming to the fore of your consciousness at that time, whether it be a fear, a doubt, a victory, a pleasure, or some pain. So all of this is our makeup. This is our physical and astral and subtle and psychic makeup inside of us. And it's all existing in one eternal moment. It's not like it's coming, it seems like it's passing in phases, but it's all existing in one eternal moment, and inside of that one eternal moment, they're coming up and down, rising and falling, like waves in that ocean out there. Rising and falling on the lake of the mind, or on the ocean of the mind, but the ocean is not changing in its depths. So one beautiful song in India says, dive deep, O mind, dive deep into the ocean of God's beauty. If you descend to the uttermost depths, there you will find the gem of love. So that's the idea of this one unchanging Brahman and all things changing. Look at how many sets of 5 sheaths have risen and fallen in time immemorial. How many beings have been born since I started speaking 2 hours ago? And how many beings have died since I started speaking? Constant rising and falling. So there's this tempest in a teapot going on, see, all the time. But it's being held in these hands, these divine hands that are unchanging. The divine hands are called projection and withdrawal. And in between the projection and withdrawal is called sustenance. Lord Brahma is in charge of creating or projecting. Lord Vishnu, Krishna, is in charge of keeping it sustained. And Lord Shiva brings it to an end. Just like a kid building a sandcastle before the tide comes in. And the waters will destroy it. He has just as much fun watching it get destroyed as he did building it. So, as I've been saying lately, and I'll repeat it again, you can worship creation, Lord Brahma's work, and you can appreciate greatly Lord Vishnu's work, sustenance or preservation. But you have to make acquaintance with Lord Shiva, the god of destruction, the one who dissolves, the one in you who dissolves. Because Shiva is not outside somewhere. I don't know if any of you have seen him walking around. That God is within you. And that's why I started the class off by saying that when our ancestors are born, that's when they're the farthest away from us, when they're next to us, sitting. That's when they're farthest away from us. When they pass and their form dissolves back into us, that's when they're nearest to us. So we should start thinking differently about this idea of apparent separation. As our upbringing, our conventional religions, even our science and our psychology in the West has not been giving us a very clear idea of the real essence of what's going on. We have to start thinking like yogis and yoginis, at least like spiritual aspirants, and become noble. And the more noble human beings we have in the world, the more nobility there will be amongst us. That is, if there are terrorist cells out there, then how about having some nice intelligent cells? The more the better, gathering together. Each one of us is an intelligent cell, and inside of us are thousands and thousands, billions of other intelligent cells, not just in the form of actual intelligence, but in the form of our ancestors, gods and goddesses we worship. Why is worship one of the 4 yogas? Why is it one of the practices? Because when we worship the symbol, it's not idol worship. Conventional religion didn't peg that right. It's not idol worship. It's worshiping the foundation behind the symbol. So when Sri Ramakrishna, that picture of him was taken, you see, he looked at it, probably didn't even know because he didn't look in a mirror, and said, that shows the state of a soul in a very high state of samadhi. That picture will be worshipped by hundreds and thousands of people after I die. You imagine saying that about yourself when you were alive? Well, there are about 4 million, 5 million people worshipping Sri Ramakrishna. So it was a prophecy. He saw it as clear as a bell. But you never met a man who was so disidentified with his 5 sheaths. You get that idea of an aura coming off a person that the apostles of Christ saw off of Jesus, and the Noble Eight saw coming off of Buddha, a light. Or the idea of almost walking on air, feet not quite touching the ground. So that comes from this refined spiritual energy taken up the spine called ojas and tejas. It's intelligence in its manifestation. It's refined intelligence. It's come about over lifetimes, but at least in a few decades of a person living in the body and sort of condensing, you see, and boiling, like you would boil milk to get it thicker and thicker, until you finally have this intense refinement of consciousness in you. And then anything you say or do, or everything you touch and so forth, everything you eat looks and tastes nothing like nothing else but Brahman. Your food seems to be intelligent. Yet, to an ordinary man looking on, it's just an insentient mass of matter. So that ability for the awakened intelligence to turn everything into Brahman is the final conclusion of the Upanishads. Vedanta siddhanta niruktiresha brahmaiva jivaham sakalam jagad sha. Means Brahman is one indivisible essence, homogeneous mass of pure conscious awareness. Time, space, living beings in the world are all in that. We're all Brahman. Akanda rupastitir eva moksho. Living in constant recognition of that fact is called enlightenment. So there's a magazine out there called What is Enlightenment? I have the answer for them. You can quit printing the magazine. Enlightenment is living in constant recognition of the fact that all this is Brahman. So if you're identifying with the sheaths, you're never going to see that. You have to be bold. You have to crush the stars to atoms and unhinge the universe. Try it. You do it every night tonight in dreaming and deep sleep anyway. Might as well do it consciously. Try it in meditation. An hour or 2 of sitting still. If you cut down the mind's waves, yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha, the vrittis, the vibrations, and you sit long enough in that stillness, you will see the light of Brahman. Nobody has the time for it today. Have you seen God? Well, I'm sorry, I don't have time. I don't have time to see my true nature, sorry. That's not high on my list today. You forget your true self, and then you just engage yourself in the non-self, you see, and then you wonder why you're unhappy and sorrowful and afraid. It's no way to live. So it holds the three states of consciousness within it: waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Think about that. Those are your three states of consciousness, and you have three bodies that go with them. Those are yours. Take control of them. Take possession of them. No God will help you do that. No devil will keep you from it. Those are imaginations of the mind. It's all about you. This is a nice one. The Vijnanamaya Kosha is the Upadhi of the Atman. It is the sheath of the Atman. So it may look like it's not as refined and high as the Anandamaya Kosha, but many of the saints and seers give the buddhi, the intelligent factor, the highest reckoning for enlightenment. As if the ego can be a little bit not only unreliable, but also very transparent, very hard to put your finger on. You'll think you've gotten your ego under control, and you start to go into your first, highest formless meditation, and that's when the ego will insinuate itself on you and spoil everything. But it's this intelligence, you see, that takes the ego around all the worlds. It's the chariot in which the mind complex rides in. Intelligence, that's why I'm teaching the intelligent particle. It's a projecting power, it's a withdrawing power, it's an all-pervasive power. It may be the first thing out the gate, you see, in the whole creative process. First thing out the gate would be intelligence. That is, if you were to see the word out of which everything comes via vibration, that light that was carrying the potential for everything in it would be intelligence. So when people say, I've seen the light, they've really seen the ocean of intelligence. Living intelligence. And by the time it gets down here, it solidifies into a microphone, into an instrument, into a body. This is just solidified intelligence now. Into your food. And that's why all is Brahman. And the word is everywhere. It was with God and it was God. Both. And John said, I don't understand what you're saying, Lord. And Christ said, you better go to Gethsemane and meditate then, because if you don't understand this projecting process and the withdrawing process, then you're only half a realized soul. Basically, some of the teachers, and I don't necessarily agree with them, but some of them are saying the difference between the Mahayana path and the Hinayana path is that Mahayana path has compassion, bodhicitta, and the Hinayana path never did. It was all about a few hundred souls getting enlightenment, and they had to be monks or arhats. But when the whole thing widened out, left India, and went to Tibet and Japan and China and Korea and Ceylon, and the most amazing spread of religion ever recorded in human history was Buddhism. And it did it without lifting a finger. What to speak of a sword or an army? So when it spread all around the world, you see, it was this Buddha nature, it was Bodhi, it was intelligence that did it. So the sage and seers give it the highest, first compound of Atman, Vivekananda called it, first compound. And he said, if you believe the will is the first compound, then you're just, playing into the hands of the Darwinists. You'd be playing into the hands of the Darwinists if you think that will has done it. For survival of the fittest and all that. It's intelligence that came first. Basically, there's this poster out now that's very disturbing about Einstein. And it has this quote that he never said on it. It said, imagination is more powerful than intelligence. And so I really objected to that when I saw it. And somebody then told me, he didn't really say that. Somebody made that up. And it's got him, sticking his tongue out, like making a face. Like, this great genius, I'm just one of you. Just like the rest of you. So somebody had this not so brainy idea of putting words in his mouth, you see. Intelligence can't even be compared to imagination. Imagination is what you're getting out there with these silly movies that they're spending billions of dollars on to entertain superficial minds in theaters and get their money. When people are starving in the streets and human beings who are God walking around in human form are left untended. That's not humanity, that's not sanity. Intelligence, waking the intelligent particle up, that will do the trick. And that makes you into an enlightened soul. That's the purpose of human existence, is to realize God. You can use any word you want there. Reality, Brahman, Allah, doesn't matter. You just better know the meaning of the word and say it in the right circle of people. I can say anything here because this is Ramakrishna's loka. This is universalism. We accept all religions here. Religion is indigenous to your soul. There's no such thing as a foreign religion. Thank you. Now, the final thing about the sheath of intelligence is that it uses mind and intellect for its appearance. So there must be a difference between intellect and intelligence. Intellect is a sheath. The sheath of a professor or the sheath of a genius, you see. They've all collected a bit of intelligence there. And therefore, the sheath itself is the holder of that intelligence. So there's a difference between the sheath and that which it holds, the essence and the container. So a good distinction to make there. Now, in the remaining time, let's make sure we finish this chart, which is, again, remember, returning just to this basic quote that we started out with 5 weeks ago about the 5 sheaths, one being inside the other, and all of them being inside of Brahman. Each one pervades the next. That is, the Anandamaya Kosha will pervade the Vijnanamaya Kosha, and these two will pervade the Manomaya Kosha, and then these 3 will pervade the Pranamaya Kosha, and these 4 will pervade the Annamaya Kosha. And so basically, when each one is transcended and given up, you're going closer and closer back to the essence, which is not a sheath at all, which is not a covering at all, which is not an upadhi, which is not a kosha, which is not a vehicle. In fact, sometimes they call it ativahana, the original vehicle. That is that which carries everything. Vahana would be something that helps you, like Vishnu rides the Garuda, you see. It would be his Vahana. So this original carrier of everything, you see, is consciousness. And it pervades everything else, but none of that can pervade it. It is the all-pervading presence and power. But by that time we would call it Shakti, or Mahashakti, or Mahamaya, or Divine Mother. Now let's look at the Anandamaya Kosha's attributes, and then we can bring this series of classes to our close. It is a reflection of bliss, but is reflected in the tamas of Maya. This is a good teaching, a little bit esoteric, but basically to simplify it is that when you see that, feel that bliss inside of yourself, which is my bliss, that's not the supreme bliss. That's your own little store of bliss. Just like you have your own little store of intelligence, you also have your own little store of bliss. And the way I've thought of to describe this is if a man or a soul was meditating inside and was very close to hearing, was actually hearing the sound of Om and was following that sound inward, or seeing the light of Brahman and following that light toward the ocean of Brahman, then there would come a time when it would arrive at that sheath of bliss and it would sit there and it would say, I've attained the ultimate. And so many souls have done that and then fallen away and never seen or immersed themselves in Brahman. Shankara says in his Vivekachudamani beautifully, he says, that ocean of Brahman, replete with the nectar-light swell of the Atman, into which my mind fell like a hailstone and merged there forever. See? That's how he describes this beautiful dissolution process of the human soul, like a hailstone, dissolving the solidified 5 sheaths that it took on back to its original state. And what I'm saying here is you're doing this in deep sleep, but nescience is still there. Cloud of unknowing is still there. You wake up a fool because you went into deep sleep as a fool. But an illumined soul will go into not only dreaming in deep sleep, but meditation in full consciousness. See the self, see the light, hear the sound, and wake up thinking, I haven't gone anywhere. There is no movement in Brahman. There is no coming and going. And that's what Vivekananda said. He said, coming and going is all nonsense. The soul, where is the time in which the soul would come? And where is the space to which it would come and go? When you've seen through time and space, then there's no time to come and go, and there's no space to go to or to come from. You're in one solid place. This is the mudra for it. Shiva mudra. Steady, stationary, static, unmoving. And that's the way the soul feels when it puts away all of this play, all of this sport, all of this dreaming, or if it's just not that innocent, all of this suffering. Because a lot of souls have come here to dream, some have come to play, some have come to sport, and some have come to suffer. And probably it's not even so simple as that. There's an admixture of all of those going on in all souls. Some are even suffering on account of others, or for the benefit of others, to take their karmas. So this is some reflection about this idea of the light of your ego. If you are there in your ego, the great soul would all of a sudden somehow make a turn away from his own ego, and he'd look in the distance and he would see the sun of Brahman when he was sitting on the moon of ego, enjoying his own little reflected light. But he wouldn't know it was reflected light. He would think it's his own. This is called my bliss. So if a New Ager comes to me and says, I follow my bliss, I usually say to him, that's too bad. What you want to do is follow the bliss of Brahman. That's called Ananda. That word isn't big in Sanskrit for no reason. There's no opposite to Ananda. It's not like, joy and sorrow or happiness and misery. Ananda is it. That's why thousands of souls, their last name is Ananda. Have you noticed? You could walk into a room of Swamis and say, with a telegram and say, would Mr. Ananda please stand up? You wouldn't know who to give the telegram to. They're all named Ananda. So they've reached that bliss, which is the peace that passes all understanding. There's nothing beyond that. It's Satchitananda. It's the highest existence, it's the highest wisdom, and it's the highest bliss. Sat Chit Ananda. Another nice Triputi to meditate on. It's like they couldn't make up their mind what to call Brahman once they saw it. Let's call it pure existence, Sat. That was one school. Another school looked at it and said, oh, it seems to me like pure intelligence. Let's call it Chit. And another school comes and says, we think it's pure bliss. We like to dance and sing in it. We're going to call it Ananda. But it's 3 in 1, see. Satchitananda. It's one of the most precious names for reality in any language. And if you put Akanda in front of it, then you've got an even more precious name. Akanda Satchitananda. And this bliss is named after it. That is, this sheath is named after it. So it's not your own, it is your own little bliss, but there is something beyond it. It appears and is felt only in favorable conditions and circumstances. Aha. I don't feel my bliss all the time, do I? It's only when it comes forward and gives me a good day, like have a nice day with a smile, you see. But we should replace the have a nice day and a smile with the shvara. The shvara means, you've seen the Om sign, right? This is waking. This is dreaming. And this is deep sleep, see? And here's the shvara off somewhere in Turyatita. In fact, it's a little one-eyed smile, is how I call it. It's a little half moon laying on its back with a little dot above it. Shvara. That's not just have a nice day, that's all my days are Brahman. All my nights are Brahman. It's beyond nice. And it's beyond real nice, too. So there's a clue. This Anandamaya Kosha is felt only in favorable conditions. It also has a cause because it requires good actions to be operative. It is not to be mistaken for the Atman, as it is dependent on something else. It is experienced in deep sleep, glimpsed in waking and dreaming, but only upon the fulfillment of desires. So they've analyzed this ego in a philosophical way to the nth degree and come up with these observances. It also remains with the body under the control of the gunas, that is, rajas, tamas, and sattva, as we just talked about. Restlessness, slothfulness, and balance, always going through that state. So it takes on the coloration of other things, circumstances, modes of nature. It changes with them. It's a chameleon. And that's why I say it's very difficult to transcend. First you have to find it. Sort of like trying to find the center of an onion. And as you do, you're crying a lot. So, therefore the seers rely quite a bit more on the intelligent particle. First thing out the door, the first compound of consciousness is intelligence. Use your intelligence. That was evidently the mantra my father wanted to bestow upon all his kids. Because that's what he always sang to us. Use your intelligence. Mm-hmm. But he didn't know anything about these teachings. Well, here's something you might have asked yourself. Oh, sorry. That is, that this student, when he hears this teaching from his guru, Shankara, says, pupil, I do not understand. You asked me to do away with these 5 sheaths, and when I do, then I see nothing but the void. What is to be known there? The teacher answers, if you can do away with these 5 sheaths through the instructions of the scriptures, what remains? The witness, consciousness, the Atman, thine own self. So that is knowing the truth, and the truth sets you free. It's just that when you first walk in a room out of a sunlit day and it's completely dark and you can't see anything, but if you remain a few minutes standing and looking, pretty soon your eyes acclimatize to the darkness, right? And you begin to see little shapes here and there, and you can move about the room. This is what you have to do in meditation. You attain the transcendence of the 5 sheaths, and you hit a place of void, rather emptiness. And then you think, like the cartoon, you see one Buddhist monk turns to the next Zen Buddhist monk and says, is this all there is? We just sit here for 8 hours a day? No, what there is by concentrating on that emptiness, then fullness begins to appear. Everything that's in you, the subtle forms, the causal forms, your lifetimes, that you were talking about at the beginning, all of that begins to suggest itself to you out of the Akashic record. And even beyond Akashic records, that is, beyond levels of space, the different Akashas, which these represent too, that is, a Bhutakasha, the Pranakasha, the Chittakasha, the Jnanakasha, and the Chiddakasha, or roughly speaking. Basically, these are all levels of space too. They're not just sheaths It's not just your individual sheath we're talking about here. It's the sheath of all human beings. It's also the sheaths of all the ancestors and the celestials. So it's not just at an individual level, it's also at a collective and a cosmic level. That's another Triputi. That is, there's the human beings as a group, and then there's the ancestors as a group, and there's the celestials as a group, and they all fit into different levels of consciousness. Basically, summate them down to these various levels of space. So, space, the beings in space, and the intelligence that has formed these levels of space are all to be considered in this quotient, and at 3 levels of consideration. Now, if you go beyond those 3 levels of consideration, you have arrived. See? And that's why he says, it is consciousness itself, it's the observer, it's the Atman, it is thine own self that has projected all this. And you participated in it willingly. Now withdraw from it willingly, like Lord Buddha did. And prove to yourself that you're not matter. You prove to yourself that you're not matter by leaving matter alone. Not by identifying more and more with it. Otherwise, you're only one sheath, aren't you? You're only one body. You don't know what food is. You don't know the energy in food. You can't even eat healthy food and good health, you see. So your whole society, your whole life, and your series of life becomes being born with beings who are tamasic and rajasic. Sri Krishna says in the Gita, some beings who worship the Bhutas, they go to the Bhutas. Bhutas means physical beings. The beings who worship the Pitris, they go to the Pitris. Pitris means ancestors. The beings that worship the sages and seers, the deities, they go to the sages and seers and the deities. But my devotees come to me, he says. Those who worship me come to me, the archetypical soul, the supreme being, the supreme form. They will come to me. So what the mind contemplates on, that it gravitates to. So therefore, charge up the chitta, raise the mind by degrees. Now, I think that, there is one more quote at the bottom of this. Shankara says, being enveloped by the 5 sheaths, the Atman does not manifest. If these sheaths are taken away, the Atman manifests, pure eternal bliss, unchangeable, direct, and self-luminous. Svayam Jyoti. The Atman is self-luminous. It shines by its own light. It doesn't borrow light from anywhere else. That's how you'll know it. Or in any of these other lesser lights and distant glares here, then you'll know it's not the Atman. And before they make that statement, all of this is Brahman, they have looked through all of with their discriminating power of the intellect, they have looked through all of those things, so that when they say all of this is Brahman, they follow it up by saying, but Brahman can never be objectified. It can never be turned into a form. So what you're seeing here in all these forms is Atman in its manifestation. But if you're taking the form to be the truth, then you won't see the Atman. That's what he's saying here. So, case in point, why none of us see God in each other. In our relationships, when we marry, Shiva doesn't see Shakti, Shakti doesn't see Shiva. They don't worship each other, do they? They fight with each other. Or it's a matter of convenience. Or I'm waiting for my soulmate. Whatever excuse is there. But to see God in everything, that's a far cry beyond mere philosophy. It's a matter of direct spiritual experience. And here's the experimental ground right here, you see. I mean, we can say everything about the Annamaya Kosha, that it's formed of food and, it's filled with filthy things and basically it's born and it dies and so forth. But basically that's the experimental station for you right now. That's the Karma Yoga station. I mean, each of these sheaths could be really very much correlated with the four yogas. So everything that I have said today about the five sheaths is coming out of what I know. And what I know is coming out of what my teachers told me and what the scriptures reveal. And the direct spiritual experience of the seers who wrote the scriptures. And India, in her perennial wisdom, is the mother of all religions. They don't call her the mother of all religions for nothing. It's instanced by the fact that there's not one prophet there. There's not one holy book. There are hundreds and dozens of each throughout time immemorial, stretching back towards a time when we can't even record. I mean, if we sing something like Shri Ramachandra Kripalu Rajamana Harana Bhavabhaya Darunam Shri Ramachandra Shri Ramachandra Shri Ramachandra Shri Ram. Probably can't find an avatar, a divine being as ancient as Ramchandra. Even before Krishna was Ram. So it's not just the amount of memory you have in your motherboard. See that word. Understand it in its most ancient implications. This is the demonstration of eternity. And not a moment has passed, because the minute I chant Ram, Ram is here present with us. Ram is all pervasive. Ram has been there since before Vivekananda came to the West, which is the reason all of us are sitting here now, is because Vivekananda came to the West. So there are many, many causes to these effects we see all around us. It's our business sort of as a Sherlock Holmes of the Maya, you see, out there, of the samsara, to look into them, to trace them to their origins. It's a beautiful word in Sanskrit, utpatti, means origin. Their whole spiritual life is based around tracing things back to their origin. And lo and behold, when they traced everything back to its origin, when they traced fire to its origin, and they found that the suns in the sky were really suns in the internal sky, and the Kundalini, the Ida and the Pingala nerves were sun and moon, and it all represented some inner universe and cosmos full of suns and stars and moons. Then they found out that that was all tracing them back to another origin that was even deeper and deeper. So finding the origins of all things, finally they came to the final conclusion called aparinama. Parinama means non-transformation. And ajativada means the path of those who know that there's no birth, no death. In other words, everything is free of origins. You trace origins to find out that everything has no origin. It's originless. There's no beginning, middle, and end to anything. Understanding that gives you a little trepidation about being caught in cycles. Because this idea that there are origins to things is what's powering and fueling our world, isn't it? Tomorrow will be a better day. So I ended one day and I'm beginning another day. My next lifetime might be more free of karma. See, so I'm already living in my next lifetime, or I'm looking into the past and brooding on the past. It's all based in cycles of time. Going to work is based in cycles of time. So I'm imagining that there's beginnings, middles, and ends to everything. But I haven't seen the beginning, middleless, endless Brahman upon which all of this movement is taking place. A dancer needs a stage. So there is a substratum, a foundation called consciousness for all of this movement, this apparent movement, because possibly speaking, probably speaking, that's another conclusion, that Brahman doesn't move, you see. If Brahman doesn't move, then probably I shouldn't move for a while and see how that feels. If I want to know God, if I want to see God, I should see how God sees. That was how one Christian mystic put it, Meister Eckhart. If you want to see God, you should see how God sees. So how does God see? Out of a single eye, if he sees at all. And when he closes that, what happens? So I should probably assume the position. Zen Buddhists tell me if I sit on a zafu, which is what I'm sitting on right now, and I sit there for 8 hours, then I will die. And so the Zen Roshi will ask you after your practice, did you die on your zafu? That's the whole purpose to Zazen, to die on your zafu. You're probably just going to go beyond the 5 sheaths, and this final sheath of the Anandamaya kosha, your little bliss that you're attached to, your clinging to life that you're attached to, you will give that up and merge yourself like a hailstone into the formless Brahman. So we made a full cycle in this teaching on the Advaita Vedanta. It's very interesting because the 5 sheaths rather are Vedanta 101 teaching. Well, this is the first thing you'll learn. This and the teaching of Vivarta, that everything here is a false superimposition over Brahman. It's all a veil, it's all a mask. And it's your business to tear those masks and veils away and see the truth. Live in the truth. So that's all Vedanta 101. So basically it's a finishing school for souls. When they come to Vedanta, which has always been described as an underground river, nourishing everything on the surface, informing all religions, but not a religion itself, then beings are getting this finishing school of wisdom level of teaching. The wisdom traditions, we're interested in them because basically we've been raised in faith traditions. So now we're beginning to go toward the wisdom traditions of the East, Taoism, Hinduism, and Buddhism, and so forth. Because there we're getting answers for our questions that we're not getting here. You see, the idea of faith and wisdom has to be merged. If it's just love and devotion, it tends to get sentimental, because it doesn't have wisdom to check it. And if it's just wisdom, it tends to get dry and intellectual, because it doesn't have love to moisten it, you see. So my teacher used to say, Vedanta is the 2 wings of the bird. You get wisdom and you get devotion fused into one, because the bird's not going anywhere with one wing. The bird is this soul that wants to leave these heavier climates and go soaring. And you could pretty much be making a same case for this idea of wisdom principles and deities. Deities get the devotion, and wisdom principles get the study, the attention. And so when you bring those two together, you've got a well-rounded spiritual life. There's nothing to learn after that. You see, there was this one great questioner. Well, there were thousands in India, but one especially great questioner that came among the rishis who were seated. What did you like to know? What's your question? And so the devotee said, teach me that one thing by which knowing all else is known. And all the rishis bowed their heads. That's the best question we ever heard. Teach me that one thing by which knowing all else is known. Because so many questioners like Narada and other great beings had come to the rishis, and what they had said was, you know, I've studied all the scriptures, I've meditated, I've done my devotions at the altar, I've tried to free myself of karmas via pure action, but I'm still missing something. I can't put my finger on what it is that I'm missing. And so then the seers have to play with them a little. You see. Send them to this teacher and that teacher to try and get that little bit of information they're missing. But this questioner was cutting to the chase. See. Just teach me that one thing. That one thing is Atman, never free, never bound. That's the knowledge of the true self within. One hates to use the word self in accordance with it, but nevertheless, pure conscious awareness, timeless, deathless consciousness, Chaitanya, Brahman, Atman, Mukti, Moksha, Kaivalya, Nirvana, Satori, Samadhi. There are words you can borrow from the different darshanas of India and different traditions too, like Fana in Islam, that peg it as far as it can be pegged. That is pointed out to you so you know that there is an ultimate supreme goal to go to. Basically you say, what's my goal in this life? And then someone else says to you, the teacher says you shouldn't have any goals. You shouldn't be goal-oriented. But then you say, no, I'm talking about the supreme goal. That's different, you see. There is a supreme goal in which all beings lean towards. They gravitate towards that. And that gets back to our intelligent cell. It's in our very memory. It's in the deepest part of our memory we retain that. We feel it when we're children. I was saying last week that I had memory of it in the crib. When you meditate on your alambanas, that is, start with earth, then meditate on fire or water, then meditate on fire, and meditate on air, meditate on ether, and then meditate on smelling, then meditate on tasting, touching, feeling, hearing. You meditate on each of these as a part of my being. This is a way of connecting into yourself. You actually sit there and take minutes, maybe hours, to meditate on these. And then when you've passed through them all, you start meditating on your different states of awareness, your waking state, your dreaming state, your deep sleep state. Anyway, somewhere along the way you meditate on your early life, when you were a baby. You try and remember what you experienced as an infant. Even prenatal, if you can, what it was like to be in the womb. And you'll find out that there is smriti bedu, there is cosmic memory of these things stored back in your mind, because there are things you've experienced, and all things you've experienced are stored back in the mind. Maybe not so much the individual mind, but definitely the collective mind, and very definitely the cosmic mind. It's all there. So if you can connect to the collective humanity and what it is going on there, and you could also connect to the cosmic mind of God through the study of cosmic principles, then you'll start to remember, these memories will start coming forward. And this is time well spent, because you're tracing origins back to this supreme origin, toward this originless being, which you are. At that point, talking about a hailstone merging in the ocean would be superfluous, because the whole idea of water solidifying into and separating itself from the ocean is silly. See, it was really a dream that happened to me. Like people are saying nowadays, oh, you were a paramecium. Pretty soon you were a salamander or something. Crawled out on the banks and sprouted legs, lost your tail. Then you were a monkey. My teacher used to laugh at that. Whenever my teacher laughed, you'd laugh with him because he was infectious. He would say, oh, you see, the scientists are trying to convince us that in order to see our relatives, we have to go to the zoo. He would laugh. Say, but what about my ancestors? Are they monkeys? Well, at least I hope they're not. And then what about the gods and goddesses and these other levels of consciousness? What about Christ saying, birds have nests and foxes have holes, but you have no place to lay your head here? Is he calling you an insect or a bird or an animal? Or is he saying mankind is cut in the image of God? We're not animals. We never were. Consciousness has the power to dream animals, and they are our projections, just like everything else, right? So we have dreamed every animal form out there. I mean, you don't have to go to outer space to find UFOs. All of this is a UFO. Octopuses in the ocean are strange creatures in another world, as far as you're concerned. Everything has come out of the human mind. Human mind is the author of everything. And that's because it is one with the Father. It's because it's infused with intelligence. And intelligence is a sentient, eternally living verity. So with those words, as inadequate as they are to really explain the topic, I leave you at the end of this series of Advaita Vedanta classes. In the meantime, may this stream of intelligent particles overflow, infuse us, wrap us in its warm, sweet embrace, and the embrace of enlightenment, which is full of existence, knowledge, bliss. And may we all then, through those stream of intelligent particles, reach the goal of human existence. So let's end here with a quick chant. Om Sato, Om Sato Ma Sadgamoya, Tamaso Ma Joytir Gamoya, Mrichor Ma Amritam Gamaya, Abira Bira Mayeti, Rudrayate Dakshinamukam, Denamam Pahinicham, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from darkness to light, from lower truth to higher truth, from the unreal to the real, and from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.
Jai ho, Vivekananda, Gujadanu, Mahimati Hari, Jai Vireshwar, Jai Tripurari, Gaye hum sab Mahima Teri.